أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Praise be to Allah, who is a being but not through the phenomenon of coming into being, who is not contained and exists but not from non-existence. He is with everything but not physically. He is different from everything but not in a physical differentiation or a physical separation. He acts without moving, and he acts without using instruments. He sees even when there is nothing to be looked at from among his creation. He is the only one, such that there is none with whom he may keep company or whom he may miss in his absence. Today, we're going to continue on in Surah Ankabout. Today's verse is verse 41, inshallah ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues after the stories of the prophets, and Allah says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ كَمَثَلِ الْعَنكَبُوتِ اتَّخَذَتْ بَيْتًا وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنكَبُوتِ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. The parable of those who take a guardian besides Allah is that of a spider spinning a shelter. And the flimsiest of all shelters is certainly that of a spider, if only they knew. So, to get into it, for one, the use of parables is the best way to put things into perspective in teachings. Allah says that the parable of those who take guardians besides Allah, referring to the pagans and the polytheists. The pagans and the polytheists, they are the ones who take parables besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are comparable to the spider. So if we look at the spider's web, its house, we see that it's not something that's strong. You see, if you look at the spider's house, a wind can overtake it. A small wind at that. It doesn't even have to be a strong wind. If it blows, then the spider's house is finished. If it rains, then it'll destroy the house, even if it's a small rain. If a little dust gets onto it, it'll just hang from the ceiling. And if fire were to burn it, then it would just be destroyed. It has no walls, no roof, no yard. It's just a trap for the creatures that it preys on. So in the case of polytheists who dwell in illusions, these worldly things they see as if they're going to sustain them forever. But if we look at history, it shows clearly the the end result of the polytheists and pagans and those who take guardians besides the Almighty Lord of the heavens and the universe. I mean, we went through Ankabout up to chapter verse 40. We're at 41 now, and we still got some verses to go. But already with all of those verses, we've seen how many examples. We looked at the example in history where Prophet Noah, peace be upon him, preached to his people. And they didn't want to stop transgressing their limits. They wanted to persist in sin. And those who didn't follow Prophet Noah, peace be upon him, didn't get saved, and they were overtaken by the water that came. They wanted to rely on the riches, the palaces, and all the stuff that they had, or the mountains that they could climb. They didn't want to board the ark. We have the example of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, who preached to his people that worshiping idols is not the right way to do things because they're of your own creation and they're limited. They're not going to provide you any sustenance or do any good for you. So, or they're not gonna lead you to peace or any of that. If you worship them, then you're choosing the fire for yourself. And you see, they didn't want to listen. And so when the Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, destroyed their idols, they didn't like that. And, even though they got clear evidence and proof, they wanted to burn him or kill him with the sword, which they ended up settling on burning him in a fire. So they built a fire, and Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, was saved from the fire. Allah told the fire to be cool and safe, and in some commentaries it says it only burnt the rope that was binding him. So you see, with that, the polytheists were not had clear proof to them. And then you see that an earthquake seized the people of Lut, who persisted in sodomy. Men going to women and men going to men and women going to women. And they were just destroyed. The earthquake seized them in a way that, they just were completely destroyed. Both Ad and Thamud, they wanted to deny the striking disaster. And what happened? The people of Ad, they were destroyed by a mighty wind, which was a tornado, which was lasting for 7 nights and 8 days. And then the people of Thamud were destroyed by a mighty blast of thunderbolts. They rejected the truth. And then on top of that, you got people, Pharaoh, Korah, and Haman, who relied on their wealth and riches. Just like a spider would rely on his web. But except for this type of thing can be taken, destroyed easily with, just a natural disaster, natural way of things. They wanted to persist in sin and rely on their wealth, that it was gonna help them, and they got swallowed by the earth, and some of them got drowned, and Allah did not do injustice to any of them. You see, because if you look at history, all of these people, what happened? Allah gave them clear proofs. Allah showed them the truth. Allah showed them the message of truth. And in the end, they rejected it. So they had a chance to do good and accept the truth and not wrong their own souls and make their own soul to suffer. But they ended up persisting in sin and making their own soul to suffer. So they ended up doing injustice to themselves and ended up being destroyed. So what they earned for themselves is what they got. So going back to the verse, it says, the parable of those who take guardians besides Allah is the parable of that of a spider who makes himself a house, but the house of a spider is the frailest of all houses. If only they knew. Having the parable, you see that these people, they don't accept that, they don't know that this is the weakest of house, that they're relying on the most frailest of guardianships. Even though they're told and they're brought clear proof, they reject that. So even if they're told this isn't going to last, they're not going to accept it. They're going to keep on relying on it. And then they're going to be destroyed, which they were. And the sad part is that people still do it nowadays. I mean, they doing all the things that they have clear proof in history of all these people who were destroyed by persisting in sin. So, of course, this house is suitable and ideal for a spider, but on the whole, there cannot be considered a house weaker than that. And the objects that they worship, the objects that the pagans and the polytheists worship, are like that of the house of a spider. It's ideal for them, but it's weak. And persistence in taking guardianship besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to result in their destruction. It's not eternal. So their heart is attached to something that's not eternal. And, it'll lead to their destruction. So, in the end, they're going to be the losers. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not let our hearts be attached to the temporary things, and attach our hearts to, and we ask Allah that He attach our hearts to Himself, the eternal thing, the eternal Lord, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all that is eternal. And we ask Allah to plant our feet firm on a straight path, and guide us and protect us from the evils. And we ask Allah to give us the wisdom and tawfiq and the blessing of being on the right path. We ask Allah to hasten the reappearance of the final Imam and make us His close supporters upon His return. And we also ask Allah to help those innocent people and believers who are being oppressed, who are being oppressed by the evil people of the world and having their right taken away from them. And we ask Allah to hasten the curse and destruction of these people who are doing the oppression and oppressing these people who are innocent. So we ask Allah to send mercy, peace, and blessings upon Muhammad and the holy, pure family of Muhammad. Arhamar Rahimin, Amin, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum.